All right, we're getting ready to knock out some videos today. No more playing around. It's championship week. The games start this week on Friday with the Pac-12 game, which I've already done a preview of a couple of days ago. So just click back a couple of videos if you haven't seen that yet and you want to check out my preview and prediction against the spread for Oregon and Utah out in the Pac-12. Today, I'm going to do 3 preview and prediction videos. Today, they're going to come out one after the other sometime this afternoon, okay? Up first, this video, I'm going to do the Big 12 and the American Conference. So Baylor versus Oklahoma, Cincinnati versus Memphis. Later this afternoon, Big 10, Wisconsin versus Ohio State, and ACC, Clemson versus Virginia. And then the third video today will be an SEC championship game preview featuring my Georgia Bulldogs against the LSU Tigers in Atlanta. Let's go. Yeah, good morning, and that's Uncle Lou here. Yep, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today, so thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also, and too, it is championship week. I'm going to knock out the rest of these preview and prediction videos today. Don't forget the live shows coming up the rest of the week. Today's Thursday, so we have a live show tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. It's a call-in show. I do it every Tuesday and Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. We'll do another call-in show Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern and talk about all the big games coming up that day. Tomorrow, Friday, 8 a.m., the morning show with Uncle Lou. We do it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 a.m. Make sure you check out the live shows. I'll also be streaming the SEC championship game on Saturday. The game starts at 4. I'll start the stream around 3 or 3:30. That'll be over on the Patreon page. So all you guys who are members over on the Patreon page, you know the routine. Make sure you check the Patreon page Saturday around 3:30. There'll be a link posted. Just click on the link. It'll take you to the live stream. If there's a reason you're not signed up on the Patreon page, but you want to be, click the link in the description of this video that says support the channel and join the Patreon page. It'll take you over there, get yourself set up, join us on Saturday, and watch this SEC title game. All right, let's go. All right, Baylor versus Oklahoma for the Big 12 title, a rematch from a game we saw earlier this season, right? Of course, the Big 12 title game is always a rematch. They have 10 teams in the Big 12. They play a round-robin regular season. So every Big 12 team plays every other Big 12 team every single season. So automatically, the title game is going to be a rematch. Last year gave us Oklahoma versus Texas round 2. This year, we get Baylor versus Oklahoma round 2. And it's sort of the same scenario as it was last year as well, right? 2 one-loss teams. Actually, what was Oklahoma? No loss team. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is, Baylor and Oklahoma played earlier in the season, right? This was the game. Baylor got out to a huge lead. This was at Baylor. One of the biggest home games Baylor has had in a long, long time. They got a huge lead. They were up, I think, 28-0 at one point, 31-3 at halftime, and ended up losing the game 34-31. Unable to get anything going in the second half offensively. Credit to Oklahoma's defense, I guess, which, we don't get an opportunity very often to say that. That's for sure. We'll see how they play in this game. But this is round 2, AT&T Stadium, Jerry World, there in Dallas, Texas, or Arlington, I guess it is. 12 o'clock over on ABC, and the Sooners are a 9-point favorite in this one. This game is hard to figure out, I think, because of the way the first game went, right? Baylor completely dominated the first half, looked like a way better team than Oklahoma on both sides of the ball, up 31-3 at halftime. Oklahoma completely dominated the second half. I mean, it's hard to remember a game where I've seen 2 halves so completely dominated by opposite teams. I really don't know if I can think of one. Definitely not a big time game. Now there's some big comebacks in the second half of some big games lately, but just total domination here, one-sided for in Baylor's favor in the first half and Oklahoma's favor in the second half. Baylor couldn't even score in the second half of that game, up 28-0, then 31-3. Oklahoma comes back roaring back in the second half, wins 34-31. Oklahoma obviously has the star power here, right? If you're watching this video, you can probably name 3, 4, 5 players on Oklahoma's offense. You probably can't name very many you probably can't name that many players on Baylor's entire team, right? But Baylor's been a pretty good team this year, especially defensively, which is why it's sort of hard to figure out what happened there in the second half with Baylor's defense. They just were unable to stop Oklahoma. Now, of course, their offense didn't help them by not being able to get anything at all going there in the second half. How's this game going to go? Is it going to look more like the first half and maybe Baylor plays really well? Is it going to look more like the second half and maybe Oklahoma dominates this game? I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I don't expect anything close to what we saw the first two times these teams played. I don't know if it was emotion or the energy from the home crowd or what it was that allowed Baylor to jump out to this huge lead on Oklahoma. Even people who were favoring Baylor heading into that game, which I don't think was very many people, I don't think anybody was expecting Baylor to jump on Oklahoma like that and be up 28-0 fairly early in that game. And I don't expect anything like that to happen again. Now, I don't expect Oklahoma to completely shut Baylor down for the entire game like they did in the second half the first time they played either. I think what we're going to see is something in the middle. I do think Oklahoma is the better team, particularly on offense. Now, they've got issues on defense. This is nothing new. We've seen this from Oklahoma over the last several years. One of the best offenses in college football, back-to-back Heisman winning quarterbacks, NFL wide receivers everywhere, really good running backs, but defensively, they can't do basic things like tackle or even come close to covering receivers. There's been times this season, particularly earlier in the season, where Oklahoma's defense did appear to me to be much better than it was the last couple of years. And while I still think Oklahoma's defense is better this season than it has been either of the last two seasons, I do not think Oklahoma's defense is anywhere near the elite in college football when you talk about defenses. Teams like Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Utah, those are pretty much your top four defenses. Florida and Auburn have pretty good defenses. Michigan's got a good defense. There's several teams in the Big Ten with good defense. I don't think Oklahoma is anywhere near that, but they are at or near the top in almost every single offensive category for the last couple of years, and that's true again this year. I think Oklahoma is just going to be too much for Baylor in this game. I do think experience matters in big games. And when I say experience, I don't necessarily mean just having juniors or seniors. I mean having juniors or seniors that have played in a game like this before. Baylor has none. Oklahoma has a roster full of juniors and seniors who have played in this Big 12 title game multiple times. I think that's a benefit. It's not enough to win the game versus a far superior team, but in a game like this where, like I said, Baylor looked like the better team in the first half last time, Oklahoma looked like the better team in the second half, even if you want to assume that these two teams, talent-wise, are even, which I don't think they are, the experience factor would give Oklahoma an edge. And again, by experience, I mean experience in this game. I think Oklahoma is the better team. I don't think Baylor offensively can keep up with Oklahoma. Like I said, I think that first game was a result of sort of some emotion and some feeding off the crowd type of thing from Baylor. Not that I think Baylor's a bad team and can't potentially give Oklahoma a good game here. I think potentially they can, especially late into the game. But I think Oklahoma finds a way to win. I think the experience edge and the overall talent edge that Oklahoma has, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, is going to be too much for Baylor to overcome in this game. I do think Oklahoma will win. The spread is 9 points. 9, if you like Oklahoma, then I think 9 is a good number for you here. A lot of games end by 10 points, right? A touchdown and a field goal. I don't expect 9 points. You can say, well, that's 3 field goals. I don't expect Oklahoma to kick 3 field goals in this game, probably. 1 or 2, maybe. I think they're going to score some points here. I'm going to go with the Sooners and lay those 9 points to cover here in the Big 12 title game, and we'll see if that'll be enough to move Oklahoma up to the 4 spot should Georgia lose in the SEC championship game, which comes up later on Saturday. Of course, Utah will have something to say about that too. They play on Friday night against Oregon, and if they beat Oregon, I tend to think they would be the team that'll be in line to get that 4 spot should Georgia lose. But we'll see. It'll come down to obviously the winner of this Big 12 game versus potentially a Utah winner in the Pac-12 game. But in this game here, 12 o'clock, ABC, Jerry World, give me the Sooners, lay to 9 points. All right, in the American Conference, another game involving a rematch from just last week, wasn't it? Cincinnati versus Memphis. You might say, well, why are you doing the American Conference? Well, the winner of this game potentially is going to get a New Year's Six bowl bid, especially, I think, if Memphis finds a way to win it. They've beat some good teams already this year. They've beat a Power 5 team. They've beat Cincinnati, right, whose only loss prior to losing to Memphis was to the number 1 team in America, Ohio State. So Cincinnati is a good team. They've got the potential to win in a rematch here. It didn't appear to be that close of a game the first go-around. This game is played in Memphis, Tennessee, so a home game, for Memphis here at the Liberty Bowl. You might want to Google where that is if you're an Alabama fan. You may be headed there here in a couple of weeks. Anyway, 3:30 on ABC, and Memphis is a 9.5-point favorite. I'm a buyer in Memphis. I was high on Cincinnati this year too, and I really like both of the head coaches here. And I'll be surprised if either of these head coaches is still coaching this school 2 years from now. I think one of these coaches is on the way out this year. That being Norvell, is that his name, at Memphis? And then Cincinnati's coach, Luke Fickell, I don't think he's going to be at Cincinnati very long either. He comes from the Ohio State staff from a few years ago, comes over to a bad Cincinnati team in each of the last 2 seasons. I think Cincinnati won 4 games 3 seasons ago. Last season, they won, I think, 11 and finished ranked. This year, they'll probably win 10 or 11, or at least 10, maybe 11 again, and finish ranked again. I don't think either of these coaches are going to be at either of these schools for very long. Norvell probably gone this year would be my guess. Maybe Luke Fickell gets gobbled up by somebody next year if he doesn't get taken this year. But these are 2 really good coaches here, 2 really good teams, well-coached teams. This will be an exciting game. This is the closest conference to the Power 5, and it's not close. And the argument can be made in any given year that potentially this conference is better than the worst Power 5 conference, depending on the year. Clemson is keeping the ACC's head above water. That's it. Without Clemson, the American Conference is clearly better than the ACC this year. There's just a whole bunch of average to below average teams in the ACC, and no one near the top other than Clemson. It's just a huge drop off after that. We're going to talk about the ACC championship game in the second video coming up later this afternoon. They play Virginia, Clemson does. But there's just the AAC, the American Conference has got some really, really good teams, and Cincinnati and Memphis this year are at the top of that pile. This, again, like the Oklahoma-Baylor game, I think this has the potential to be a pretty good game. And you hear this all the time, it's hard to beat the same team twice in one season. I get that, and while I sort of agree, and you have like an SEC title game from a couple of years ago to point to where Georgia just got drugged against Auburn in the regular season, and then the exact opposite happened in the SEC title game. So there is maybe, I guess, some truth to that. I picked Oklahoma to win for the second time over Baylor. I'm going to pick Memphis to win here for the second time over Cincinnati. It looked like Memphis, to me, was clearly the better team when they played. And like I mentioned, this isn't like they played a month ago or 2 or 3 months ago. They literally just played. So it's not like either of these teams is going to be totally different now than they were when they played a week ago. Right? I mean, it's the same teams. No injuries have happened between the last time they played and now. It's not like they've suddenly switched up anything they're doing from one week to the next. It's going to be the same 2 teams we saw a week ago. And if you watched any of that game, you have to come to the conclusion that Memphis looked like the better team, and that's why they're favored by 9.5 here. I think they win again. Having this as a home game, clearly a big benefit to Memphis. How many people are going to travel from Cincinnati to this game? I'm not sure. Even if they're willing to travel, how easy are the tickets going to be able to come by? Memphis is going to buy up a lot of these tickets, obviously, both firsthand from the school itself, and then obviously the secondhand market, I think, will be dominated by Memphis fans as well. 3:30, ABC, Memphis, Tennessee, in the Liberty Bowl, the American Conference Championship game. Give me the Memphis Tigers, lay to 9.5. All right, there's your first preview video. How'd you like that? Yeah, Big 12 and the American Conference. 2 very important games in terms of New Year's 6, right? Baylor and Oklahoma are both going to New Year's 6 bowls at a minimum. It's possible one of those 2 teams could make a playoff if Utah and Georgia lose. So obvious implications there in the Big 12 title game between Baylor and Oklahoma. And I think the winner of the Cincinnati-Memphis game also has a good chance at a New Year's 6 bowl, especially if it's Memphis, because that means they will have finished the season with a conference title and only 1 loss, and will most likely be the highest ranked group of 5 team, which of course would earn them an invitation to a New Year's 6 bowl. So lots of things on the line here in both of these games. Are they the most exciting games of the day? Probably not, but they're conference championship games. There's not very many games on Saturday, so if you're a college football fan, you're probably going to watch some or all of both of these games. Those are my 2 picks. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be back here in a little bit with a second preview video today, and then a third one after that. Have a good morning.